And we should be good. Hello, welcome to the live filmmaker Q&A with Josh Stifter. It's Stifter?
It is Stifter. Yep.
For Greywoods Plot. Thanks so much for being here with us, Josh.
Yeah, this is awesome. I love it.
Now you and I, we had a correspondence a few years ago with your first, you submitted a feature to us, The Good Exorcist. We didn't play that film, I'm sorry to say. We actually had a much smaller program that year.
Sure.
So there were only a few, we only, I think, played maybe 3 features that year. But I enjoyed the film very much, and I feel like I saw it, I feel like I watched it also on like Prime, Amazon Prime or something.
Yeah, it's been kind of going around. So it's weird when you're like truly independent filmmaking, you sort of just do whatever you can to get eyes on your project. So I made The Good Exorcist with Robert Rodriguez's reality show, Rebel Without a Crew, and they own the rights to it. It was supposed to play for free on Go90, which was Verizon's streaming service, and that went out of business. So then we got caught in this weird limbo of who owns the movie now and everything. And then I just decided one day to throw it up on Amazon Prime, and then we kind of sat on there for a little bit, and then I took it down off of there when we had talks of distribution, which has been a year and a half now in the making, but hopefully in the next couple of weeks I can announce what's happening with the movie, which is kind of, if you've seen the movie, it's kind of exactly where you'd think it should go. When you make your own damn movie, wink wink, there's a place and a certain person who enjoys those kind of movies, and so it's going that direction. And hopefully we'll be able to see it on Blu-ray or on like a physical media, because I think that's the kind of place where a movie like that needs to be, so people can toss it from hand to hand. It's just the sort of like punk rock filmmaking that only people who make movies or really love the craft can get into it, because you can see every flaw and dirty edge in the movie. It's that kind of a movie.
Now those people, which shall heretofore remain unnamed, are, in all of my experience, very good people.
Oh yeah, I mean, and so far, like, that's the thing with doing the distribution for these movies and going to the film festivals and meeting new people. We knew that The Good Exorcist was going to be a tough sell. It's like less than the low budget. It was made with reality TV. Like, it was the biggest challenge of my life, because I had to deal with cameras on me. There are 300 or 250 visual effects in that movie, and 120 of them are removing camera crew and reality crew from shots. So like, it's stuff that no one even notices. It's the mess of that. Whereas Greywoods was made for even less. The Good Exorcist was $7,000. If it was really $7,000, I can't really say, because I had the benefit of having Robert Rodriguez, borrowing me gear and borrowing, not gear, but like borrowing me like props and stuff like that. If you see the show, you'll see he just kind of gave us a few things to help us along the way. Um, but then it had the challenge of the reality crew. So the $7,000 is kind of nonsense. Just like when I talk about Greywoods Plot and the budget, everyone always asks me about the budget. What was the budget for Greywoods Plot? It's like it's nonsensical. I can't tell you what it was, because do I count my experience, like what I would have paid myself? If I would have paid myself, it'd be a $200,000 movie, but I didn't pay myself anything, so it was a $2,000 movie. Like, it was nothing. We paid the most expensive thing of the movie was the hotel room and the booze. Like, that was, we what going out to eat for the last dinner. I think the Dogman mask cost us a few $100 to make, because we got a quote from people to make this chupacabra monster make me into the dog boy, and I was getting quoted like $6,000. The lowest I could get people down to was like $3,000 just for the cowl. Like, it would be just the mask. And I went to Nate Strauss, who is a buddy of mine, who he showed up the first time we went to film and failed miserably at filming. He just showed up. It was supposed to be just Daniel, Keith, and I, and Strauss somehow was there. I don't even know how he came, but he ended up playing the fly man in the movie. He's like the guy who's covered in flies through the whole thing. So he just showed up one day, and then he ended up becoming sort of my AD, I guess. Like, he was my right hand man through the whole process. If I needed someone, we ended up, it was really funny because when we started, those guys had no idea how to film. I'd been on film shoots, I've been doing animation and film for years. I know like the lingo, I know what we're doing, I understand 3-point lighting, I get the logistics of making a movie. They had no idea. And by the end, we were filming Greywoods. We were filming one of the last scenes we filmed on my birthday. It was the people in the woods. There's the sequence where there's all the people, like the living forest,
So
and the living forest was just like a random idea. I just wanted to see a living forest. I've never seen that before in a movie, and I wanted to give it a shot. There's a lot of Wizard of Oz in this movie, like a lot of weird, like nonsensical things that I just kind of wanted to see that I'd never seen. So I made this living forest, and I invited people out to my birthday party, and I was like, come out to my birthday party. Don't bring presents. Don't bring booze. I'll supply the booze. I'll supply the food and chips. You just come out and bring Halloween makeup, like zombie makeup, and bring zombie makeup, and I'll put you in my movie. And so a bunch of my friends came out, and I put them all in the movie as living trees. Like, the first one that he bumps into is my wife on the tree. And then there's like a bunch of friends throughout the woods. Daniel's wife and his son are in there somewhere. But I didn't pay anything for that. But that day when everyone came out and we had this huge group of people all turning themselves into zombies, that was the day I realized, like, I had made my crew. Like, Daniel, Keith, and Strauss, I could tell them, like, we're gonna set up 3-point lighting. I need you to set one up over there, you over there. Daniel, I need you running guts because we need to get those guts made. The guts were it's bread dough. I was like, I need you running guts, which would means go make the bread dough. And like, we had a crew pulled together out of guys who had no idea what any of that meant before. And I think that's like one of those key, like, indie filmmaker things where you find the people you're copacetic with, your posse, and you just make the most out of it.
awesome.
So cool.
That scene in the woods is fantastic. Like, it really takes me back to sort of Jacques Tourneur like style, like lighting. It was so stark there, and
Yeah.
just the wailing of the people, and it's just chilling.
I remember I was sitting down, and we had filmed like a big chunk of the movie, and I'm like, you know what? I don't like to be influenced by other things while I'm in the process. So like, when I'm filming something, like if I'm filming a black and white movie, I watch Amelie. Like, I watch the most beautiful, colorful things in the world because I don't want to be influenced in the other direction. But I remember we got about halfway through, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to sit down and watch The Wolf Man, because that's like one of my favorite. Like, the lighting is, and those fake sets are so gorgeous and whatever. And I remember sitting down and watching it, and being like, oh, you know what the biggest thing is they just set lights up in odd, unrealistic locations. Like, the moon doesn't make any sense. So as we were filming a lot of the wood stuff, one of the things to try to make it look more like a set, because we were in my sister's backyard. That's just my sister's backyard, which is like, an acre that we made look like 100 acres. Like, we just constantly were like moving the camera around to try to make it look bigger than it was. And I remember when I saw that, I was like, well, one trick I could do is to just set up some lights behind trees randomly, and it'll look nonsensical and it'll make it look more like a practical set than the actual woods. And rewatching it just now, I was like, wow, some of those shots really do look like odd sets more than the woods.
Yeah. You'd also mentioned that you're familiar with animation. There's a really cool animated sequence kind of there in the first act. Is that, did you do that?
Yeah, so there's the animated there's actually there's the Keith in the dream sequence with the bird flying down, and then there's the killer hobo, which was just sort of my odd reference to Chud, I guess. I don't know why. I just sometimes I do things where I'm just like, you know what? No one can tell me no, so I'm just going to do it. And as we were doing that, in The Good Exorcist, there was originally this scene where Stanley tells this, or there is a scene where Stanley tells a story about his like dream and his sock hands and trying to cover his penis, and he says penis way too many times, and it becomes so awkward. In
Yeah.
that was supposed to be like an animated or weird dream sequence as well. And Avery was so funny delivering the lines. I'm like, we're not cutting away. We just got to show his face and get the laughs. So when I went into this one, I was like, you know what? I want to show the dichotomy of the dream, like the really dark, like Lynchian sun is exploding. This is what we think of as dreams. And then like what I kind of dream of, which is like Keith with the bird landing on his shoulder. Like that's like sort
Like
of what I
Snow White.
imagine Keith would dream like. Um, but yeah, like when I went into this one, I kind of want to do the same thing. This was sort of the answer to The Good Exorcist, where The Good Exorcist, I was sort of forced into this box of working inside of the reality show and working inside of the time frame that I had. I mean, I made that whole feature in like 3 months from the day we started filming to the day I finished with hundreds of visual effects, did sound design myself, everything. And that's way too tight of a time to actually pull off something that is polished in any way. This one, I wanted to polish it a little more. I wanted to learn. I wanted to learn how to do 5.1 sound. I wanted to like take some risks and try some things, but I didn't want to like move off the path too far from what that original concept of The Good Exorcist was, which was like try things, just be experimental and weird. And if you want to make a living forest, do it. If you want to, have a killer hobo animation, do it. If you want to turn yourself into a dog boy. And the funny thing is originally it was supposed to be a spider boy. There was the dog man stuff is totally not in the original concept of the movie, which is why there's that shot at the very beginning of the spider where he's like, what the hell does a spider have to do with anything? That's a reference to me, just for me, for fun, because I had filmed that with the Super 8 camera. I filmed that spider and I was like, oh, you know what? It'll be a fun little reference to what the movie was going to be.
No, it is a black and white film, and so much of it looks great. You didn't film it on film though, did you? Or did you?
No, no, I filmed it on like the cheapest camera you could film on in
Hmm.
4K, which is I filmed it on the A6300, the Sony A6300, which is like a little $1,000 camera. Like it's a pretty cheap camera. I mean, you probably can't even find an A6300 anymore because they're so crappy. Like the battery dies in 10 minutes. I had to constantly be flipping batteries. We couldn't do long takes because it would die. And it was just it was a really difficult camera to shoot something like this on. But at the time when I got it, it was the perfect way to do it. But we originally, when we first filmed, because we went out 4 years ago now, we went out and started filming and just failed. Like a lot of the B-roll and some random shots are from when we filmed the first time. But then after I filmed The Good Exorcist, I came back and I was like, it was stewing in my head this concept of the dog man and like Daniel being a Frankenstein, like finally pulling off this concept that I always wanted to do, where Daniel was like the Dr. Frankenstein or the Dr. Moreau to me being the monster. It's just, I want to do that since we were kids. So I was like, we got to do it. We got to give it a shot. And that's why we just went into it and went for it. But originally when we filmed it, we were planning on doing it in color. And as I was looking through the B-roll footage and the stuff that we had filmed from a year before at that point, I was like, man, it looks really gorgeous in black and white. And if I put this little bit of a filter on it, like, give it a little filmic look, it looks nice. Now there is some actual Super 8 in the movie. The Super 8 stuff you see, I filmed on Super 8. And that's my son who plays like the little me in the movie,
Oh,
or
cool.
the little Dom in the movie. And he actually plays the little dying monster on the table as well. And then, as you know, he plays the son in First of November. So he's sort of like been on my, he's been in my movies as I've been making them. And but no, we filmed it, and then as Daniel and I looked at the footage, we were just like, man, what if we just keep going in black and white? Like, it's basically a reference to the Ed Wood movies we loved growing up anyway. Like the reference to we love black and white movies. I was a huge Creature from the Black Lagoon fan. And like, I'm a huge fan of just black and white movies in general. There's something about that stark, like, I don't know, the inability to like it it's so flat, and I just love like a flatness to it that makes me get lost in the characters and lost in the story, because I'm not focused on all the colors and all the other things. I'm just lost in the movie then. So we thought, if we don't have a big budget or a budget at all, and we're going to be trying some risks, why not take the ultimate risk and just go black and white and really make it a callback movie to the stuff that we love.
Totally.
I definitely see like when the doctor and like you're sitting at the table all bandaged up and he's talking, and it's like I'm like, wow, this really reminds me of like the scene in Frankenstein with the old man
Yeah,
in the cottage, and just that stark white, and then the kind of background fades away, and yeah, it makes you really kind of stick there with the characters.
I
Some of that
always
is the great lighting in those
Mhm.
scenes too.
And I know what the best part is? Most of that lighting is so simple. It's like 3 LED lights, or sometimes it's only 2 with using the natural lighting in the background. We really didn't go crazy with the lighting. If you use it and like just kind of focus on where your shadows are falling and how a creepy thing to do is instantly just put a low, like flat angle. So you're kind of casting just a hint of that creepy old school shadow, and then put a backlight to just give it that hint of a nice edge. You just instantly have cinematic looking lighting. It's not really all that difficult. Now, sometimes we went way over the top and we'd have, weird lights set up all over the place. We really went big on that scene where he is like unwrapping the bandages. And that was just Daniel and I. Just the two of us filmed that scene by ourselves. There was no one else in the room, just the two of us. And we were setting up the lighting as we went and trying to figure out how to make the camera run on both of us and stuff like that. But it was really fun, but trying to, but we took the time with those shots to really make sure we had cool lighting and nice depth of field and like make it look fun.
Uh, One of the things I think that makes this film, I mean, you mentioned this is sort of the answer to sort of having too much structure,
Yeah.
right? To be able to kind of do what you want. And I think that's why, I mean, we almost can't go to the actual movies anymore. Like we're too spoiled with independent film because you're really getting sort of singular visions in indie
Yeah.
film that you don't get, when you go see the latest Marvel or whatever bullshit in the theater.
I agree. I mean, for me, I can get into it if I put myself in the right mindset and I go in like that. But I am one of the things with like independent film and seeing this sort of like vision of people with nothing having to find a way to get it done. It becomes so much more enjoyable for me because I can see the heart and the passion. Most people look at it and they see the flaws. The flaws to me are like what make it what it is. Like I look at I grew up on The Simpsons, and like I look at old Simpsons, I can't really watch the new ones because they're so polished and clean. But I look at the old ones where you can see the shadow of the cell and you can see the color like changing. I love those flaws. And one of the things I wanted to make sure with this movie we got was I didn't want it to be distracting with flaws, but I wanted to make sure that it did still keep that heart of like independent filmmaking, which is hard not to keep when you've got 2 people on set making the movie at a lot of given points. I mean, there's shots in that movie that are just me in my basement by myself, or randomly being like, Jenny, would you mind running this track for me? Like I need to just get a shot of me sitting at a desk and I want it to move a little bit. And she like, slinks downstairs and she's like, what do you need me to do? Like that's my wife plays like 4 characters in the movie, and every single one of them, if you like really pay attention, you can like see she does not want to be there at all. She's like the mail person who walks to like put the tape into the mailbox at the beginning, and the person walks with like a hunched over I don't want to be here today mentality. And I just love it because it's so the epitome of how that movie got made, me begging my family to help out.
It's so quirky, and there's so many different kind of stories in there. Um, and a big part of it is this kind of childhood friend story. And you mentioned that you've known these guys like your whole life, so you
Yeah, I
didn't
met
really even hire actors for this.
no, there's no actors hired in this. I mean, the closest thing is the guy who plays my brother on the like Skype call is a dude named Aaron McKenna, and he was my producer on Rebel Without a Crew. And he was in Minneapolis for a shoot or for a what are those things called? Like a nitro circus. You know what that is? It's like a Tony Hawk thing or
Mm.
like a dirt biking thing. I think he was in
Okay.
town for like a nitro circus that he was producing. And I was like, hey man, you want to shoot something in your hotel? So I just set up a camera and shot his side of the conversation and then shot mine in my basement by myself later. But he's acted in a few things. Other than that, like Daniel's been in my stuff and a couple of other random things. Keith has never acted before in anything in his life. And I mean, it was my mom plays my mom, and the only reason she was my mom is because I wanted my mom to say horrible shit. So I was like, I'm gonna have her come over one day. I'm gonna make her say like she wished she'd never had me, and talk about rape shows and eating dog or whatever. Like I made her just say awful shit and had fun with it.
She was really great.
She was
She
good.
was
I was
really
gonna
cool.
ask you if that was your actual mom.
Uh,
That is my actual mom,
her
but she was a
her
total
comic
trooper
timing
too.
is her comic timing is not nothing. Like she's got something there.
Yeah, and the best part was like I have outtakes. You can see them on YouTube. My YouTube is Flush Studios, and on there's some outtakes. And I made my mom eat like Chinese food for like 20 minutes straight, just like shovel it. I would just tell her, I'd be like, just keep eating it, and she'd be like, oh, I don't want to eat anymore. And I'd just be like, no, 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 keep going. I need it. I need the footage. Just basically like jackassing my mom.
Oh.
But she was a trooper and did a great job. And it's one of my favorite parts of the movie now, like just because it was fun to edit. And that's her dog that's sitting next to her, and my dog is the black dog on the floor. So it was just filmed in my living room, and we had a blast doing it. And then we had hired or we're going to hire an actress to come play the gal at the bar, and that person backed out like last minute, like the day we were filming. And so we just called a friend and we're like, hey, would you mind coming out? And she's never acted before and came out, and I think she gives it a little bit of that B movie flair. I like little things like that that make me go like, oh wow, those happy accidents that make me enjoy the movie or me
Mhm.
appreciate something in it.
Yeah.
Nice. I was also gonna ask like how I mean the opening is so I think relatable to anyone who has been in a creative pursuit of this whole like this is my I feel like this is my last chance at like
Yeah.
doing something with this. And I often wonder with filmmakers like how much of themselves they're putting. I mean, obviously it's coming from you, but like how parallel is that for that story in your life?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is pretty parallel. I mean, the funny thing is I would say I found a lot of I purposely took a lot of the negative that I feel versus how I actually show myself. I tend to be a pretty positive person. I really love filmmaking and stuff like that. But I remember having this thought like, you have to let the art kind of overtake you. Like the best artists become consumed, or even just like reading about artists. You read about like Van Gogh, or you read about these other people who just like the art just consumed them. And I remember thinking like, well, what is my take on that? Like, what's my take on the depravity of an artist? And that's where this sort of came from, is like how deep do you go into it? And as we got to the end of the movie, and most people will probably have watched it before they listen to this Q&A, but the things he does at the end of the movie, the distance that Dom goes to actually make something he feels is important, is pretty nasty and pretty deep. And I feel like that's sort of like where my mind was going, where I thought about like, wow, I literally left my wife and kids for like 2.5 months to go make The Good Exorcist. And I had just had a baby like 6 months before, and I had a 3-year-old son at the time, and my wife was left with them alone. I'm like, wow, I'm going to like a weird place that most people don't go to get this thing made. Now, that's not as far as Dom goes, obviously, but there is like an emotional element of being in that place. Um, and I think the beginning of the movie and the friendship, one of the things I really like about the movie, or one of the things I really wanted to pull off with the movie, is most of the time you see movies where it's like about two friends who, or two enemies who become friends, or two friends who have a falling out and then they get back together and it all ends happy. Or if it's a horror movie, they have that moment where they really like find themselves together. I didn't want that. I wanted like the divorce of a friendship. I wanted it to be that idea. Um, and as much as it's a divorce of a friendship, it's also the divorce of the creative process. Like they've obviously worked together this whole time, and I think at a certain point in your life, you go, okay, I have to make a choice. Is this thing consuming me for the rest of my life? Am I going to be this artist, or am I going to let it go and I'm going to move on and do something else? And I think a lot of that's a very dramatic way of putting it, but I think there is that like slight element of that where you do have to like make these choices, and that's I wanted to kind of talk about that in this movie.
It's I think the relationship is handled really well, and is that I mean, I don't want to put you on the spot, but is that a manifestation of your own, sort of fears about your childhood friendship there, or
I think it's less about my childhood friendships and more about my, fear of losing the love of the craft. I think there is that element of like, being nervous about like, man, how long do you make independent movies for? How like where do you want to go? What do you want to do? And that was a big part of this. And it's also a big part of my next movie that I'm working on, Scumbag, is this idea of like, or a scumbag is almost the opposite, where it's like looking back and being like, wow, was this all a waste? Versus Greywoods is very much about like, how do we push forward? How do we keep moving in a new, fresh direction? And yeah, I think I think those are the sort of the questions that we like maybe didn't even ask ourselves as we were writing the script. They just naturally kind of came out. But then the more and more we were in the edit and more finding the performances, and with Greywoods, it was this like catalyst character of I wanted the person who like you as you meet new people and you kind of like find new things to attach yourself to. I think a lot of people have that. It's really like an oddly coming of age story, that I didn't realize it was a coming of age story, but for all of the characters, it sort of is this like idea of like, where do we go now that we're adults? Yeah,
it's I mean, it's a horror movie and it's got a relatively grim ending, but it's also a kind of wish fulfillment story, right? I mean, what
it
horror
is.
kid doesn't want to not just find the chupacabra but become the chupacabra, right?
Yeah, and I don't even really I personally don't really find it that horrifying. I find it a little bit more terrifying. Like this concept of like the terror of what do I do? Where am I? There's like I didn't want to go for the jump scares or the, whatever, because I really wanted it to kind of sink in that these are like dark concepts. They're not just a quick beat. They're like things that keep me personally up at night. And even with the Good Exorcist, I got into that a little bit, thinking about or talking about like faith and religion and what it means to Father Gil versus Maria, and what these concepts mean. I like that sort of stuff. I like taking a really stupid movie and putting a little bit of my own heart into it here and there.
Awesome. Uh, yeah, we really loved the roundness of the film, just like all the how thought provoking it was, what a great look it has, the great performances, from the three of you primarily, and
And there's a lot of
yeah,
stupid in it too. I think one of the things that
sure,
a lot of independent filmmakers are afraid to do is like they becoming illogical can be kind of scary, and like doing something like, can I put them in a living forest? Can I cut to an animation of a hobo just like I saw that scene again as I was watching it just now, and I'm like, man, I am the most abrupt director in history. Like I just suddenly go from like they're lost in the woods, cut to animation. Like, oh, didn't you hear about these two animation? And like, for me, it works. Like, it's fun for me to watch, and I think that that's the kind of risks that I personally like to see in independent movies. I like it when people are willing to just do whatever crazy thing pops into their head, especially if you have really thought it through and have a cohesive idea to it.
Gwen was laughing like crazy during the underwear scene.
Oh, that was me in my backyard, in my sister's backyard, in my underwear, and
With the lashes.
yeah, I don't know why I thought that would be so funny, but it worked for me. And that line that Daniel has where he's like, I'm like, oh yeah, we had a couple beers, and he goes, a few, looks like a fucking six pack. That was actually a improv. Like Daniel did that wasn't supposed to be like a take. Daniel was just being an idiot off camera and like had screwed up his line earlier and then was just goofing on it. And I was still rolling camera and I saw that in the edit and I'm like, I'm keeping it. I'm keeping it. And he
Yeah,
hated it.
it's such a weird thing to say.
It is such a weird thing to say. And I think it's so funny. And I've been to a couple screenings and it always gets like a huge laugh. And one guy came up to me afterwards. He's like, that six pack line is the funniest thing I've ever heard. I'm like, oh, I got to keep it now. I have to keep it.
There's something I was saying to him, like, why are dudes in their underwear running around like always funny? It's never enough.
I part of me, like, so when I made The Good Exorcist, one of the things I really wanted to do was make a comedy with like horror references that my wife would actually watch. Like that was like the whole push was I wanted to make something because I knew she'd have to sit through it a whole bunch of times. So I wanted to make something that she would watch. And then when I made Greywoods Plot, I was like, you know what? I want to make half of a movie that my wife would think is funny and enjoy, and then totally throw her for a loop and make the second half miserable for her. And it is, totally is. And so then with the new one, Daniel and I are working on, the whole concept is like, I want to do everything that will drive my wife nuts. Like I want to make the hardest movie for her to watch. My wife hates Band-Aids, like Band-Aids gross her out to no end. So the movie is called BandAid Face. And it's all about like that's my monster is BandAid Face. And like she calls it the anti-love song. She's like, this is the opposite. Every time I show her a new picture, she's like, this is the opposite of a love song. And I'm like, yes, yes. It's a masterpiece. But yeah, so that was one of the things. It's just like with Greywoods Plot, I really wanted to, I mean, obviously the movie takes a crazy turn from comedy, me in my underwear, you know, Keith and I just being goofy in the woods, and it totally takes a shift to something far more emotional and far darker. But I still like, it's been fun watching it with audiences and seeing people's reaction because most of the time people get through it. Like it isn't like torture porn. You know what I mean? Like it never goes as far as it can. It always has like a silliness to it. And I think that's why stuff like The Living Forest, which is in a lot of movies would be really, really stupid. In this movie, it kind of works because it takes you out of the like having my face cut up or Dom having his face cut up and stuff like that, and gives you like a little bit of breath to just enjoy some silly throwback, almost Ed Woodish type like B movie horror, and I like that.
Can you tell us a little bit, or tell us about the effects and the, you know, when he's doing all the surgery and pulling the teeth out and like that black thick blood, like how did you make blood? Was it syrup? Chocolate syrup?
No, the blood was like when I was on Rebel Without a Crew, I would get like really stressed out because I had the reality crew following me around and it was a stressful situation. And to cope with the stress, what I would do is it was like right before Halloween. So all of the like spirit Halloweens were open. And if I got super stressed, I would just drive the like 5-minute drive to Spirit Halloween and I would just buy a gallon of fake blood every time. So when I left Rebel Without a Crew, I had like 10 gallons of fake blood. So on this, I was just like dousing myself in that fake blood from that I take. It's just the gallon blood you get from like Spirit Halloween. But the nice thing about black and white is you can color correct the hell out of anything. So I could just grab the reds in the shot and turn them to black. So I wanted that blood to be like thick and nasty. The other thing was it was like -10 degrees in Minnesota when we filmed that sequence. So all of that, like when I'm getting my face cut up and it's all chunky and stuff, that's all that blood actually freezing to my face. So it was like actually freezing and that cold. I've had people be like, man, you look so terrified on that table. You're like shaking and scared. I'm like, yeah, I'm just a really good actor. Total BS. I was just freezing. I was I was laying on a metal table at like -10 degrees and naked. And then Daniel and Keith would run over this little space heater to me between takes and like warm me up so I didn't get hypothermia, and then like run it away. And I just sit
Oh
there
my
and
god.
shake while they filmed, and then they'd run it back.
Oh my
Um, yeah, and then I just like, I actually just puked blood up all over my face. And there's really awesome outtakes of like my kids coming in while I'm doing all of this stuff, just covered in blood and stuff like that, and watching me look like I'm bleeding out on the table. But yeah, it was cold, and it was the worst part is I had contacts in at that point, so that I could see what I was directing still. So they'd like show me the monitor and be like, this is the shot. And I'd be like, okay, that works. And let's go. And then they would pour blood on my face, and it would like roll down my eyes and everything. But the blood would get into the contacts, and it soak into the contacts and then freeze in the contacts, which was
Oh,
like extremely painful.
jeez.
oh my gosh.
The
But I
lengths,
just
the
went for
lengths
it.
you go to. Yeah.
I had to go for it. It looks good because of the fact that we went for it. And the nice thing is we did a test. My wife and I did a test of pouring the blood down my face. I think that's on my YouTube too. And she just waterboarded me with fake blood. And I so then once we actually went to go film it, I could kind of see how the blood would fall, and we got it to do that cool like go down both sides at the same time, which I think is a great little shot that I we wouldn't know. And there's actually that second shot where he does the second slice, and I kind of like spit blood all over myself. That was actually me like choking on the blood because it had gone in my mouth, and I was just like, "Ugh," and then just kept it in the movie because I thought it was nasty.
It was a yeah, like I like the turn at the end because it starts out with this kind of not exactly downer, but you can tell that it's somebody who's at a point in their
Yeah, it's
lives where things
depressive.
aren't really going great, and then it becomes this kind of fun thing where they go out to try to find this um where this video came from and see if it's real, and then
But also kind of like recapture their thing, like their magic.
Yeah,
yeah, but
well,
it
I
but it
always
was
love
really
movies.
it was really satisfying to see that it went to that weird dark place at the end.
That's what I wanted. I was hoping it would be satisfying in the way that Jaws is satisfying to me, where it's like Jaws is an adventure movie. That movie is not scary besides the couple of parts with the shark. But like half of that movie is so fun and adventurous and just them goofing around. And then it gets messed up, and you're like, these guys are going to get killed by a shark. This is messed up. I really wanted that sort of a feeling. I like those kind of movies, even Island of Dr. Moreau or Terror is a Man, or like the movies that this was really based on. A lot of them do start out kind of like fun, or even like Island of Dr. Moreau, when as much as people hate that movie, there is this interesting theme to it where it is like kind of fun and
Yeah.
just not what you expect. But there's these monsters that are involved and stuff. I really wanted to try to capture that. um even like a lot of the old Universal monster movies have this sense of fun to them that
Mhm.
isn't captured in modern horror at all. And I really love it when horror, especially independent horror, does that, and it has that sort of like, I don't know, it's brevity in moments, and just lets the characters be silly, and but properly silly. And then when it does get dark, it really owns it. I love that.
Oh, you mentioned Terror is a Man. That's one of those sort of Island of Blood movies, right?
Yep, yeah, yeah, it is an Island Blood movie. Yep,
Yeah.
which are all like kind of Island of Dr. Moreau style, like turning people into animals and stuff. So I that's sort of always been my like jam.
Yeah.
When I love body horror just in general, and so to be able to make a body horror and not have anyone tell me no, and then have my friends come on board to actually like, I mean, Strauss made the Dogman mask. He came in, he looked it up online and figured out how to like do a full cast of my face. We did it in my kitchen with my kids running around with cameras, so that if I died in the kitchen, we would at least have proof that we were tried. And so like we did the whole thing. And in fact, The one thing we did wrong was we didn't use enough Vaseline on the back of my neck and on my eyelids and eyebrows, and it like ripped off my eyebrows and eyelids when we were taking the casting off. But we did all that ourselves, and then Strauss made the mask and it fit to my face and stuff. It was awesome. And I still have it. I wear it every once in a while to freak my family out.
It is upsetting. It's upsetting to look at.
It is, yeah.
It's actually even worse in person, I think, when you see it like in person, in color, and like if I put a little blood on it and stuff, it's really upsetting. And that was really fun trying to find that character too, because I had to like kind of stay in the Dom character, but also like try to invoke this like deeper, creepy voice and like find a bigger, bolder, kind of cheesy character. So it was fun. It was fun, acting while directing and trying to think about what the visual effects were going to be at the same time and doing everything sort of day by day, taking it shot by shot.
So much of your just normal environment is in that film. I mean, I think the mic we're looking at, I think, is probably the one in the film, right?
Probably. I mean, everything that I have, I just used what I had. The what do you call it? The surgical room was my wife's studio. That's our garage that we turned into a studio. The place where he like unwraps the face, that's my laundry room. That's just like everything in there is the house that Keith is sitting at playing the Game Boy, where Miles is sitting at playing the Game Boy. That's Keith's old house. Like we just used the places we had and filmed it. Even the bar that we go, have a drink at the beginning of the movie is Wicked Wart in Minneapolis, it's in Robbinsdale outside of Minneapolis. That's my like, if you guys came to Minnesota and I was like, hey, you guys want to come out and have a drink, we would go to Wicked Wart. Like that's my stomping grounds. So like everything I used was just the stuff I had around me. It's one of the benefits of being in Minnesota versus being in LA. You can just use everything you have and no one asks questions. The cabin is my cousin's, like it's my wife's cousin's husband's dad's place. And I just put on Facebook, I was like, does anyone have a weird cabin we could film at? And they were like, we do. So we put the cabin. And the first shot of the movie, that first scene of the movie is it's Daniel sitting in this room with flies like flying all around him. So we had been filming there for a couple days, and then we went in there one day and it was like 100 degrees out, and we walked in the front door and it just stunk so bad, and we looked around and there was just flies everywhere, and I'm like, we are not filming in here, this is nasty, I don't even want to be in here, this is so gross. And Daniel was like, no, come film me sitting in the chair. So he just sat down in the chair and let flies like fly all around him while I filmed him for like 15 minutes. And then I was like, let's get the hell out of here. That wasn't in the script. We had no idea. But then when I was looking at the footage, I'm like, oh, that's a great opening for the movie. Let's just show Doug sitting there crying in the chair covered in flies.
Oh, man.
So cool. Well, so what about, besides all the stuff around you that you used in the film, we talked about I used your mom and your kids were on set. I know we're here to talk about Greywoods Plot, but we would be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit about 1st of November.
Sure.
And that amazing child actor that you have living with you.
Yeah, Daniel and I, we're in the midst of the pandemic, and we weren't able to make anything. Like it just sucks because you're stuck. And as creatives, if you can't tell from Greywoods Plot, I'm obsessed with making things. Like that character who's making these YouTube videos, and even after he's given up and he's taking a break, he gets one video and all of a sudden with a crappy obviously clay animated chupacabra in the background, and he's like, we got to go in the woods. Like that's me. I'm that guy. So we had gone a few months without making anything. We didn't have anything really in the works. Greywoods Plot was kind of hitting festivals, but we didn't, last year was terrible for festivals. So we were just trying to figure out what we were going to do. And Daniel was like, hey man, I have an idea. I was throwing away pumpkins yesterday. And this was literally November 1st. He was like, I was throwing away our pumpkins yesterday. What if we just took a bunch of pumpkins and made them attack us? I was like, what do you mean? He's like, like Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, but it's killer pumpkins. I'm like, all right, I'm sold. Let's do this thing. And we went and tried to hunt down pumpkins, which apparently the day after, any time after November 1st, it becomes much more difficult to find pumpkins. So then we went through this hassle of trying to find pumpkins, which was way more challenging than we thought it would be. And but we wrote the script, and I was like, you know what? If we do this, let's have Max in it, because number one, it'd be fun to work with him. Number two, we don't have anybody else. We're in the midst of COVID and can't invite anyone over. So we're stuck with Max and you, and we all have to get tested before we even do this. And I don't want to deal with getting other people tested for COVID beforehand. So it was Daniel and Strauss, who plays the Fly Man in Greywoods. The three of us filmed most of it, and then we invited Max out for a couple of scenes. And the funny thing is Max is one of the best actors I've worked with. He learned all of his lines. He came out and delivered his monologue like take after take. In fact, one day we filmed at my house. So we filmed Max's takes in two separate spots, but I filmed one time, it was just he and I set up the camera. I was like, dude, you have to deliver this whole thing in like one take as much as you can. Like, let's just try it and see if you can get through the whole thing. And he delivers this huge monologue for an 8-year, 7-year-old. It's a huge monologue. And I mean, it'd be huge for Daniel to do. But I asked him to do this whole thing. He did it like 4 times. And then I was like, oh, I forgot to hit record on the audio. You're going to have to do it again, bud. And he was like, all right, let's do it again. And was like a total trooper for the whole thing. But the best part was trying to get him to cuss. Was so funny. He's got that one line where he says the S word. And I didn't know what would be a funny cuss word for a kid to say. You don't want to go too big. You don't want to go too small. So we were like, let's try them all. And watching him like look at my wife and be like, can I say that? And I'd be like, just say it, man. You can say fuck. Just say it. And he's like, oh, fuck. And then you got to deliver it. Say it like you mean it. Oh, fuck. No, like you mean it. It was just like over and over. But eventually we got some good ones out of him. And once he like realized, because he's acting, you can say whatever you want. I think the beauty of it set in, and we got really good. I think his line in the movie ended up being like, oh shit, I told you, Dad, or something like that. And he drops the S-bomb hard. But he was even so cool. Improv some lines. He improv that line where he's like, don't eat my candy, you jerk. He just made that up.
Nice.
He's such a delight to watch in that. And that was cool. We got a lot of really great feedback. If anybody's watching now, if we didn't make it clear, Josh also made the 1st of November, which played Sunday. Is that right? We played Sunday?
Yeah.
And that got huge laughs in the audience. Huge.
That's
laughs.
good. I mean, it was just basically it was our take on sort of like Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, and it was like sort of trying to think about like what would be a good little pitch piece for a bigger idea. And we've always wanted to do like a kids, like not a kids, but like a PG-13 Halloween movie. And we were like, well, what if we just go like nasty with it and then see how far we can take it? Like where does this go into the craziness? Like Gremlins was nasty, like Gremlins was gross. So we were like, how far can we go with like this Gremlins pumpkin concept? And just kept pushing it a little further and further, and had a lot of fun just throwing Daniel around Strauss's kitchen and putting pumpkins all over the house and seeing what we could get away with nothing but a couple pumpkins and the 3 of us.
That also has a really cool animated sequence in it too.
Yeah, I love doing animation. So I just get stuck where I come up with these ideas where I'm like, what kind of animation can I do? Like where can I put some cartoons? And it makes for fun. I find that audiences really like it. We're in this like world where the mainstream movies are so afraid to let you remember you're watching a movie. They always want you to think that you're like watching a real life, like to the point where you get characters constantly saying stuff like, this isn't a movie. Like, okay, come on. We never would say that. Like, I don't care what's happening. I would never be like, we're not in a movie, guys. There's monsters here. So I do the opposite, where I'm like, let's remind them constantly that this is going to be a movie. So we set that one up with the animation early on, and we're just like, this is Max's interpretation of what evil pumpkins would be like.
I think that animation is really great for that, especially when you would normally have this kind of exposition bomb, the sort of mythology explanation. It's nice to have a brief little. We've seen that in a few. The last Lovecraft does that nicely.
Yeah.
Relic of Cthulhu. They have a nice animated sequence where they explain the whole Cthulhu mythos,
Yeah, I
and it really
remember.
gives it a little accessibility.
Yeah, Krampus has a really great the movie Krampus has a really great animated like exposition moment, and that because I think I did The Good Exorcist before I saw that, and I used that in The Good Exorcist too, where I was explaining like the exposition of like who the Good Exorcist is through animation, and I remember seeing it in that as well and being like, oh, it's just such a great way to explain things and let people in. But if it's a cheesy concept, if you do it as a cartoon, you can get away with so much because it is just so over the top just to see it. So we don't have to explain that these pumpkins come back to life because it's stupid. Everyone knows that. It's just dumb. But if you do it in a cartoon, everyone's just like, "Oh, this is just fun. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with having fun."
This is sort of evocative of those, like the Grinch Halloween special, and
Yeah.
kind of takes you back to the sorts of things you would watch seasonally on TV before even VCRs. Um,
I think that kind of stuff definitely plays into my films because I grew up with the hunting down something weird on cable TV late at night. And I think Greywoods Plot was really the answer to that, not having that very much anymore, not having that like thing that you can, I don't know, that everything is so the same. Like I miss that era of flipping through cable channels and all of a sudden being like, there's a movie that I've like if, they always asked me while I was on Rebel Without a Crew, like if you could make any movie you want, like what's your dream project? What movie would you want to remake, or would you want to work on a Star Wars or whatever? And I remember I would always say I either wanted to do a Critters movie or I wanted to work, and they're like, no, we're talking like $100 million. I'm like, a Critters movie, a Ghoulies movie. I want to do a Ghoulies.
Ghoulies.
And they'd be like, but the one that I really want to do, if I got like a huge budget, I would want to do this movie called The Naked Jungle. It's like a Charlton Heston like giant killer ant movie that was like a love story. It was awful, but it was awesome. And the only reason I know about this is because I was like 11 years old and I'm like, Naked Jungle, I'm gonna see some boobs. Turns out the only boob is Charlton Heston. But I was like but then there's killer ants. And I was always like, how awesome would a giant like a them style giant killer ant movie, but with set on a plantation and like with this big, I mean, instead of Charlton Heston, I'd probably put Daniel Degnan in, but like this, like over the top actor who thinks he's all handsome and awesome. And then we just see ants kill people for like 45 minutes of the hour and a half.
I would go see that.
Yeah, I want to make that. And I'd still call it The Naked Jungle and still not put any boobs in it, just to make every 11-year-old out there mad.
We really like the way, the 1st of November amps. There's a moment where it really amps up. There's a little bit where it's like, okay, pumpkins are attacking. That's weird and bloody and gross and fun. But then there's the sort of the pumpkin sorcerer, right? Or the pumpkin master, I guess.
Yeah.
Which gives it a really it takes kind of a weird, fun Halloween concept and then just makes it just almost uncomfortably strange.
Yeah.
For a movie that's already strange.
And I think part of that was us really wanting to, me wanting to show that this thing could continue to get bigger and bigger and bigger. What I always liked about movies from the 80s, especially, was that they were like constantly one-upping themselves through the whole movie. And you'd always be like, okay, what are they going to do next? Okay, now we're going to go here. Like you'd almost to the point of being annoyed by how far they continuously were going. And I really wanted to hit that because my hope is I would love to turn the 1st of November into like a PG-13 kind of like a Amblin like monster movie and have this sort of fun like a poltergeisty type, like not hard, not R, not over the top nasty, but creepy, and like for kids, that sort of entry into horror movie, sort of my Goosebumps, I guess. And so that's why, like, when I did this, I was like, well, we got to keep amping it up through the whole thing. It's got to start with one evil pumpkin, but then it becomes a whole bunch of little evil pumpkins. But then those little evil pumpkins have their overlord, and we get this payoff of like, and then we just end it. We just end it without answering any questions, without like really giving it a story. We're just going like, this is the vibe. This is what the movie could be. Now let us make a movie where it's like Max and his pumpkin buddy trying to save the world from hell breaking loose on the 1st of November.
Uh, uh, likewise, I think the Greywoods Plot, does a similar thing. It kind of amps up through the film and sort of adds and adds and adds until the film you get at the end is really not the film you thought you were going to get.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was a big part of it. That's what I kind of set out to do. Was I always like it when a movie is like makes a big shift. I'm a big proponent of a movie that starts one way and by the end you're like, oh, I didn't know that's where it was going, or like I didn't think this is what I was going to feel at the end. And that goes for like any kind of movie. Recently I've been obsessed with There Will Be Blood, and I was trying to figure out why I'm obsessed with There Will Be Blood, and it is that it starts out as a movie that you think, or when I think about it, I think it's about like the oil industry and how evil like these rich people are and the money of it all. And then like at the end of the movie, it becomes like this like anti-religion, like this horrible, like just awful ending that is not at all the way you think that movie is going to go. And I just love that sort of thing. I love movies that make you feel one way and then at the end just kick you in the ass with something completely different. And for me, that part of the fun of Greywoods Plot was figuring out what that was as I was making it. And so I actually knew the ending. I knew that I wanted it to end messed up. Originally, it was supposed to end like during the surgery, basically. I didn't know that all of that other stuff was going to happen at the end. We sort of made that up as we went. In fact, the dinner table scene, the yes and no tapping on the table, we filmed that 2 weeks before our first film festival. That scene wasn't in the script, it wasn't in the movie at all, and I was like, something is missing. It cut from Miles getting hit with the bat to him unraveling the wrapping, and I'm like, they don't have a connection. I don't feel the connection. And so I sat down and I wrote this yes and no scene, and I sent it to Daniel, and he's like, we can film it at my work's basement. So we went to his work, and they had this creepy basement. We just filmed it there. In fact, we didn't have any food either. So the food that they're eating is, I ran across the street to the gas station, and the thing in the cup that Dog Boy Dom, is drinking out of is just like salsa, like salsa you'd put on a taco, like paste picante sauce salsa. And I actually drank it, and it's nasty to drink salsa straight out of a cup. But and then it was like a cheap salad from a gas station that Daniel's like cutting up with nasty chicken, like cold chicken. And yeah, so we filmed that like 2 weeks before the festival, or before it was due to go to the festival. We filmed it. I rushed it as fast as I could, and then I actually called my guy who did the score. His name's Curtis, and he's amazing. But I called Curtis, and I'm like, hey, there's no way you're going to get a score done in time for this, because I'm not going to have the edit done. Are you cool if I just cut from the score through the movie? And if you watch that scene, it's just like literally every major score piece played back to back, and it gives it this really cool like bookend to the movie, that you kind of get all of the score, all of the major score chunks in one sequence that then like lets kind of know the movie's wrapping up. I like that.
The worst part of, if there's a downside to movies that really change tone like that, is that you can only really experience that once. We talk about the worst thing about Audition, Takashi Miike's Audition, is that you can't today put it on without realizing it's a horror movie.
Right.
But if you could live that wonderful moment where it's the sort of light-hearted romantic comedy with a guy casting for a girlfriend before it becomes the thing,
Yeah.
and you can't really roll back on that. It's sold as a horror movie, it's shown as a horror movie, it's continually referenced. So nobody today really gets to experience it quite that way.
One of my favorite things about Greywoods Plot is the opposite seems to be happening, is everyone goes into it thinking that they're going to get like this black and white moody horror movie, and then they sort of forget that as they watch the first time, and they're watching it going like, oh, this is a fun adventure. Oh, it's like two guys in the woods. I'm laughing. Oh, okay. Oh, this is like cheesy indie B movie. I'm all right with this. And then the movie takes the shift, and then they remember what it is, and they're like, oh no, we have to go down this road, and then they
Oh, he's tied to a
slowly,
tree now.
yeah, exactly. It's super fun to watch the like in a theater with people, hear the like air leave the room as that stuff starts to happen. It goes from like laughs and lighthearted, and everyone's kind of like drinking their soda and having a good time to like, oh no, where are we? I love that. I feel like a puppet master.
There's a question for you in the chat. Twisted Tentacle asks, I got a feeling that part of Greywood's plot is a sort of social commentary on our current society's need for fame, with YouTube and TikTok, especially those who are willing to go further than most and crossing that line of ethical sensibility. Was that something you meant to say with the film?
Yeah, and I personally don't have that. It was me sort of making fun of this idea of fame. I grew up in this. I played in punk bands where we played for like 5 people, and it was a good night. So can look at a YouTube video that gets 100 views and be like, 100 people watch this? That's amazing. So I don't have that like need for that, but I see it everywhere. People hunting for likes, and people hunting for that they don't have the self-awareness to go like, I made this for me, or a bad review comes in and it breaks their soul. And I don't really have that. I mean, I luckily I have Daniel, so even if I do have that and I get a bad review, or I don't know, I put something out there that doesn't perform the way I want it to, I'm just like, Daniel, why didn't this do what I wanted to do? Or why didn't they like it? And he's like, dude, you're fine. Grow up. Like, so I don't have that, but it was sort of more me making fun of it than anything. Like the idea of someone being suicidal over their stupid cryptozoology YouTube video not getting views is kind of comical to me. Like, it's not that important. So it was a commentary on that a little bit, but it also is sort of the truth. A lot of us, like, I would love to get a giant ant movie that I get $100 million to make. Like, we all have our dreams and that thing we're pushing for, and it's heartbreaking when you don't get it pretty consistently. So yeah, it's both sides of that, where I'm making fun of it, but I'm also sort of going like, hey, I understand. It sucks. Everyone has their dream and their thing they want to do, even if it's like, I just want to find the time to be able to work on my third movie. Like, you struggle to get that. And yeah.
I love the temporariness of the suicide. I mean, not to make light of suicide
No,
or these feelings. And we know when it comes to independent filmmakers, you put everything into your movies,
yeah,
that to not really get seen or known could be crushing. But I love that moment when it's like the wrong Chinese food is on the line. And again, he goes, yeah, well, okay, I'll think about this later.
exactly. And I think that's there is like a sort of bipolarness to the artist. I mean, I know I have it in me where one day I love what I'm doing and the next day I hate it. And I really wanted to like make the Dom character that, and show like he goes from like almost like being brutally mean to his mom to like almost having a conversation with her, and then back to mean like instantly. So that scene was really important to me, because it was like, I want to show how the person that he's comfortable around, he's like as moody gets. And then we see that with him like later in the movie, where they're sitting there at the fire and he like instantly pounces on his buddy about how the way he holds his beer. Such a trivial, stupid thing. But like, that's the way that the artist looks at their art. That's the way that we like sort of work, is we are like, one second we love it, the next second we hate it. And their friendship is supposed to be sort of that like or the two sides of the artist constantly and showing how you're always fighting between these two ideas, even the dream sequences, one being completely goofy and like loving life in that dream, and the other being killed and like having this miserable experience.
At the end, I mean, well, the end when he's, Dom's being given a choice, like, do you want to be this? You want to be like something special, or you want to go back to your own life? It's like there's that moment of sort of like almost inner defeat or
Yeah.
realization that like, oh God, he's right. Like I really don't have anything, so I guess I'll do this.
Yeah,
It's really
delivered
interesting.
Daniel had this really awesome line where he goes, and I think it might have been in the script, but the way he delivers it is what sells it to me, where he's like, Dom says, I just want to go home. And he goes, no, you don't. And that, like, to me, that's like the epitome of the truth. Like, that's when you're in that moment and you're like, you can sense that you're moving forward and you don't want to go back. You don't want to, like, you don't want to, you can't. You have to move forward into the next thing. You have to, like, push yourself just that little step further. I love that. And it's all in Daniel's delivery of that line. But no, you don't. Don't be stupid. Like, you're gonna be a dog boy. Let's get this thing rolling.
But like Daniel's delivery of lines, like he, calling him like, "Oh, you find your little dog creature." He's so
Yeah.
dismissive of it.
I saw a moose once.
Yeah.
You ever seen a moose? Majestic. That was an improv. That was actually an improv. He did that line the first time we went out filming, and we filmed the sequence. We just all improv. We had no script. We were just making up as we go. We had like scenes figured out, but we didn't know what we were doing. And that was a line he said while we were filming, and I was like, I gotta put that in the movie. So I actually wrote it in the script, and we refilmed it. So was like the conversation when we're sitting on that hay bale. Dom and Miles are sitting on the hay bale talking about their favorite animal. That was totally improv the first time we did it, and it was sloppier and it wasn't quite as clean. But that line of when I asked Keith, "What's your favorite animal?" and he said, "I don't know, like a dog," that like totally changed the movie. That was the line that made me go like, "Oh, it's not a Spider-Man, it's a dog man." Like this whole movie is a movie about friendship. He's got to become a dog boy. And then we got, well, we were filming the first time, we got really drunk. Daniel and I got really drunk, and Strauss drove us to Walmart. And we were like, we should buy like a really messed up prop to hang that. The chain in that tree was actually grown into that tree. And Daniel was like, we should find something messed up that we could hang you from, that you're like chained to the tree with. And we were walking through Walmart drunk and found this like dog, like the messed up dog collar with the big spikes. Like
Yeah.
I would never in a million years put that on my dog. But like I went, we got to put that on me. Like I'm gonna put that on. And then after we filmed that scene, I was like, I have to become a dog. Like that's the end of it. He's a dog man.
Wow. So even at that point, you really didn't know what was happening. Yeah.
No, we had no idea. We were so just figuring it out. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of filmmakers don't, they like take for granted, those early stages of figuring out their movie. And we wouldn't have made this movie if it wasn't for that first 6 days in the woods, just like filming random stuff and messing around and trying to figure out what it was. We wrote the script based on those 6 days.
Wow. So there's a comment in the chat here that, but before I tell you, at least 3 separate people that don't know each other walked up to me at the festival on Sunday and said this to me, the same thing. It says, well, so this person says, this is when we were talking about the 1st of November, said, I love that short. Man, that kid was intense.
That's a Daniel joke. Daniel loves like goofy repetition, and I like there's something about the goofy repetition that always makes me laugh. So I'm always like, dude, go for it. You got to get the goofy repetition in there. And I like that one because, generally it's like the rule of threes. You have to do the man, the kid's intense 3 times. But this movie was so short, we got away with doing it twice, and it's still memorable. And that always kills me because I'm like, logically, we should have got it in one more time. But I think deep down, we like make the audience think it when the kid is looking at Daniel with the pumpkin on his head bleeding out, and he's like, holy shit. I told you this would happen, Dad. You're like, that kid's intense.
Yeah, it really stuck with the audience.
That's good. I love that. I'll have to tell Daniel because that's a Daniel thing. Daniel's like so good at those kind of jokes.
Well, and was that your wife that was in the movie?
Nope, that's our friend Lindsay. She Daniel called her up. She's like an actress here in Minneapolis, and we didn't, because of COVID and everything, we didn't have a whole lot of people. So we were just kind of asking around, like, who has recently been tested, who, you know, is willing to mask up and do this and like be distanced from the camera and stuff. And Lindsay was down and she did such a good job. She was so fun to work with because I'd never worked with her before. So for me, it's always fun to work with someone new, outside of Daniel and Keith and Strauss. So this one was a fun adventure because I got to work with two new people, Lindsay and Max. Granted, I've worked with Max a little bit before, but
her delivery of she says it the first time, I think. She's like, man, that kid does like that.
She said it the second time in the when she's like loading up the groceries. Yes, she's like, man, that kid's intense. Yeah, she's got some really great deliveries. She was like, one of the things that's hard with independent films and like making this kind of stuff is getting people who are just like kind of willing to go with the flow. And she was like willing to go with the flow, like willing to go. We went and filmed at a grocery store that was crowded and we didn't have permission. And we were just like, we're going to go film here. And we filmed the first time and I wasn't happy with the shot. I was like, this isn't weird enough. We got to find a location that's like dead. And she drove out to this other location that I had and we went and filmed there. And, you know, that willingness to just drive around and find the right thing with the director who doesn't know exactly what they're doing. And the truth is no director knows exactly what they're doing. They just pretend like they do, and then things go wrong because they're not willing to change. I'm constantly like, if this isn't right, I'm going to tell you guys, let's figure out how to do it better. And that's what we did. And we just finally got the shot that I wanted, in this like empty parking lot. And then I just digitally put a grocery store in the background and stuff like that. So
well, geez, we've kept you on for about hour and 15.
Oh, that's the way I roll.
But we should probably let you go at some point there. It must be
it's going on
Minnesota now.
Yeah, it's going on 2.
Yeah. But it's been a pleasure talking to you. Is there
it's been awesome.
Anything else you want to tell our audience about Greywoods Plot, or did we get most of it in there?
I think we got most of it in there, and if we didn't, you can tune into other things and I will probably talk about them or ask any questions and I will answer them on social media. I love chatting about the movies and just talking about them. So if anyone has any questions, don't be afraid to come ask.
Be sure to get down into our Discord server there. Are you already in there?
I am in there. Yeah, I've been chatting away as much as I can, and I'm still catching up. I was away this weekend, so I missed a bunch of stuff as it was happening. So I've been catching up. I watched the female women in film panel today. That was awesome. And I've been trying to catch up on all the shorts first and then going back to the features. But I watched The Stairs today and I'm hoping to watch another feature tomorrow. So yeah.
They're all, I mean, our lineup this year is just magnificent. I think it's all worth your time if you can get to it. Don't miss the Turn of the Screw if you haven't seen it.
I did. I watched that one. That one is so good. Yeah, that was the first one I watched because I'm going to be honest. I just expected it to be like a typical telling of Turn of the Screw, like they all are. I've seen 6 versions of them now, and that's what I expected, and it was not that at all. And that performance is good. She is so good.
Yeah,
and the kids are good too. Oh, it's all good. Yeah, it was really good.
Yeah, the kids in that are really pitch perfect. I think they're sort of almost what you expect from Miles and Flora.
Yeah.
But the way they set that up, and I thought about it when we were talking earlier about not, this sort of pretending this isn't a movie, and they almost sort of candidly at the beginning of that tell you you're about to watch like a spook show.
Yeah.
When the guy goes, oh, we have these sound effects. Oh, they sound real, don't they? And it's a horror story, and it's very like right at the beginning, it kind of says like you're watching a movie and we're going to try to scare the shit out of you. So, prepare yourself for this,
But then in the performance, she just like lives it. Like she's so in it that you as an audience member are like vicariously living through her in the moment. I love that sort of stuff. It's just such a different take on the story. I loved it. Yeah, I thought that was really good.
You can't quite tell where the actress ends and her own experience begins.
Yeah.
It's beautifully done. Well, shoot, let's let you go. I guess we'll
Right
let you off
on.
the hook. Thanks so much for being on this Q&A with us. Sorry I you know took over the conversation for the most part.
It was awesome. And hopefully, we'll all have something in the coming years and can actually join you at Portland Horror in person.
Yeah, we would love that.
We'd love that, and we love what you do, man.
Awesome.
Yeah, and even and I know we didn't play The Good Exorcist, but I love that movie. Nice, we really enjoyed it.
I'm not that person who, like, I understand how hard it is to run a film festival and how programming is such a challenge, especially like, a lot of us think you make a feature and your feature is like such a challenge that it gets into things, but it's the opposite. Shorts are so much easier to get in because you can program so many more of them. And it's so easy. It's so much easier to send a short out to a bunch of festivals for a lot less money too, because they're usually cheaper to send a short. Um, but no, I totally understand, and hopefully, as Daniel and I move forward with some new stuff, we can get it out there and keep being a part of Portland horror in some way.
Yeah, awesome. All
Right
right.
on.
Well, I'm gonna lean over out of shot so I can do the things we need to do to turn it off, but don't go anywhere.
Right on. That was fun. I love talking about this kind of stuff.